Every year we invent new ways to be more productive. AI assistants, time-tracking apps, digital planners. Yet despite the flood of new tools, productivity hasn't accelerated the way people hoped. Major reports note that growth has been uneven, with experts debating whether AI's impact will pay off more in the long run than it has so far. The problem isn't that the tools don't work. It's that many people have no clarity about what truly matters. High achievers in 2025 approach this differently. They choose in advance which 7 areas of life they'll master and stop wasting energy on the rest. In this video, I'll show you how clarity in those 7 areas compounds over time and helps you get far more done without working longer hours. And it all starts by uncovering the real barrier that most people never see. The hidden barrier: lack of clarity. Most people assume the reason they're not as productive as they'd like is because they're missing the right app, planner, or AI assistant. But when you dig deeper, the real barrier isn't tools, it's clarity. Productivity doesn't fall apart because we lack systems. It falls apart because we don't know what we want those systems to achieve. Without that foundation, every new app just adds another layer of distraction. You've probably seen it. Someone experiments with new templates, syncs calendars across devices, and tries out yet another note-taking platform. But by the end of the week, they're still asking, what actually moved forward? That gap is what a lack of clarity looks like. Without a clear destination, efficiency turns into busyness with no direction. You can see the difference most clearly when you compare 2 people in the same job. One starts their day buried in email, Slack messages, and pings across 3 platforms. They react to whatever shows up next, filling their hours with activity but not progress. By evening, they can list dozens of things they touched, but struggle to name even one outcome that mattered. The other person begins the day with a single defined priority, aligned to a broader goal. Distractions still arrive, but they filter them against that priority. Their hours look quieter from the outside, but their output points in a clear direction. The lesson is simple. Clarity doesn't add time, it gives your time meaning. This gap shows up in everyday work too. Think of someone juggling 3 different productivity apps, a notebook synced with a task manager, a digital calendar packed with labels like urgent and someday, maybe even an AI-driven assistant suggesting reprioritizations every hour. It feels like progress, but they spend more energy reshuffling tasks than completing them. Instead of momentum, they create friction. It's like building a detailed map, but refusing to choose a destination. With no clarity about what outcome really matters, even the best technology only adds noise. Research into remote and hybrid work highlights the cost. Many surveys now show that distraction is one of the biggest drains on knowledge workers. Notifications, overlapping systems, and constant decisions about what to do first all eat away at cognitive resources. One study in 2025 reported that remote employees experience higher levels of decision fatigue, not because there's less structure, but because there are too many competing priorities. At the same time, research from Achievers found that when companies supported flexibility instead of adding more tools, managers reported stronger performance benefits and higher engagement. The mixed data tells us something important. It's not the tools themselves that determine productivity. It's the clarity people bring into how they use them. What separates the small group of consistently high performers from everyone else is their refusal to let noise dictate their time. They face the same conditions: endless communication, shifting expectations, and new platforms every month, but they anchor themselves with clarity first. Before choosing which Slack thread to answer, they've already decided which projects actually drive results. Before trialing the latest app, they've filtered it against whether it supports their existing focus. This doesn't mean they never adapt. It means they adapt within the guardrails of a bigger vision. In a chaotic environment, that clarity functions as a competitive advantage, multiplying the impact of every effort. That's where the 7 areas of clarity become essential. People who sustain progress across years don't wait for tools to tell them what's important. They use a framework that spans across work, money, health, personal growth, relationships, contribution, and inner foundation. These 7 areas form a baseline for making decisions. If something supports one of these priorities, it stays. If it conflicts, it goes. The result isn't that distractions disappear, but that they lose their power to hijack attention. Every decision passes through a filter of clarity, which conserves energy and reduces the fatigue that comes from constant second-guessing. Lack of clarity, on the other hand, quietly taxes every system you build. You can download the most advanced scheduling software, block out hours for deep work, even automate reminders. But if you haven't yet defined the outcome those habits are meant to serve, you've only made yourself more efficient at chasing the wrong things. That's why clarity isn't just another skill in the productivity stack. It's the foundation that gives direction to every other system. Without it, progress collapses into noise. With it, each tool gains purpose. The turning point isn't in grabbing the next hack, but in defining exactly what matters. Once you know that, the tools fall into place naturally. Your hours stop leaking into endless low-value work because each day begins with answers to the question of why. Tasks line up behind priorities instead of pulling you in every direction. This is the shift that turns productivity from a grind into focused execution, where progress feels steady and deliberate rather than scattered. The people who seem relaxed but still produce 10 times more aren't working harder. They're working with clarity. The question then is how to build that kind of clarity in practical terms. You can't just think of it as a single statement or goal. Real clarity stretches across the 7 areas of life, because if one remains undefined, it pulls you back into confusion. And the first area to establish is work. In 2025 especially, with jobs changing under pressure from AI and automation, the question of career direction isn't just urgent, it's unavoidable. What kind of career you choose doesn't only shape how you spend your days. It defines identity, opportunities, and even how other areas of life connect. That's why career clarity is the first step forward. Career clarity in 2025. In 2025, the central challenge for many professionals is not just how to stay busy, but how to decide what kind of career is worth building at all. Artificial intelligence is redrawing job descriptions faster than universities or training programs can respond, and entire fields are getting reorganized. People who once relied on steady titles are learning that security is no longer about holding onto a role. It's about staying adaptable. The bigger question is how to choose work that will still matter tomorrow, instead of chasing opportunities that vanish as fast as they appear. Career clarity provides that anchor. It means deliberately deciding which type of work adds the most value to your life and which lane you want to grow in over time. With that choice in place, you stop reacting to every new tool or trend with fear of missing out. Instead, you filter opportunities by whether they support your path. That simple filter prevents wasted years of experimentation and endless second-guessing. Decisions flow more easily because they point to one direction instead of scattering your effort. Hours feel amplified, not because you work harder, but because you know exactly what you're working toward. Take 2 designers as an example. One jumps constantly between motion graphics, 3D modeling, website templates, and the newest plugins. They collect a trail of unfinished online courses and never gain traction. The other chooses a lane, AI-assisted interface design for health apps. At the start, it feels small, maybe even risky, but over time, they build credibility. Clients reach out for their specific expertise, and projects grow in scope and scale. Both designers put in long hours, but their trajectories split dramatically. What sets them apart is not talent, it's the clarity of focus that lets one build depth while the other spreads thin. This level of clarity is difficult in a culture where rebranding yourself takes just a few clicks. People spend entire weekends refining titles like strategic innovator or AI futurist on LinkedIn, hoping a clever tagline will open doors. But the hard work isn't cosmetic. It's the discipline of defining what kind of work you will actually build mastery in. The polished headline creates an illusion of momentum, but without substance behind it, the progress is shallow. Words cannot replace direction. Research highlights why this decision matters even more now. Industry surveys and economic reports show that roles designed for partnership with AI, where humans guide, correct, and enhance machine output, are expanding faster than traditional tracks. PwC analysis found that industries most exposed to AI adoption have also recorded stronger growth in revenue per worker. This suggests that clarity about how to position yourself alongside AI doesn't just reduce risk, it increases opportunity. If you decide early which part of your role relies on pairing your expertise with AI, you adapt quickly and thrive. If you ignore the trend and cling to older processes, you risk sliding into obsolescence. Clarity is often mistaken for limitation. Many believe it's safer to stay open, learning a little of everything just in case one option disappears. But generalized dabbling produces shallow results. Specialists who pick a lane tend to build recognition far earlier, and that recognition compounds into authority and influence. A simple analogy helps here. When British Cycling hired Dave Brailsford, he introduced the philosophy of marginal gains, focusing on tiny improvements in a few critical areas instead of trying to improve everything at once. That narrow focus transformed the team, leading to dominant international results. Careers work the same way. Choosing a niche looks small at first, but incremental progress in one direction builds momentum far stronger than jumping between 10 possibilities. The practical advantages are clear. Without a defined path, people spend hours rewriting resumes for roles that don't fit, scrolling through job boards, or debating night after night about whether another certification might finally solve their uncertainty. With clarity, those wasted hours vanish. The energy saved by avoiding indecision flows back into depth, building skills, publishing work, or cultivating a reputation in the chosen field. And while clarity narrows scope, it actually expands options later. History shows that most industry leaders didn't start broadly. They began with a narrow problem or niche and expanded outward after credibility took shape. A generalist often struggles for recognition because nothing distinguishes them. A focused professional, on the other hand, becomes associated with a clear kind of value, and from there broader opportunities appear naturally. This shift in career clarity even affects daily productivity. Employees who know their lane move faster because they aren't torn between short-term distractions. Instead of chasing side projects that promise easy cash but pull them away from their long-term arc, they weigh every opportunity against a career compass. If it aligns, they commit. If not, they decline without guilt. That mental discipline reduces fatigue and frees attention for the work that compounds value over years. Compare the two paths over time. The unclear professional jumps to each new opening, chasing titles, credentials, or temporary pay boosts while quietly losing momentum. The clear professional advances inch by inch in one direction. From the outside, their growth may look modest in the beginning, but compound depth creates tipping points, whether that's scaling to leadership, building a client base, teaching others, or even automating the work within their expertise. Two people may put in the same hours, but the outcomes diverge widely when clarity determines where the hours go. The truth is that career clarity won't answer every challenge, but it sets the baseline. Without it, money management feels chaotic, daily health habits lose consistency, and personal growth spreads scattered across random trends. With it, each of those other areas builds on a stable career foundation. A focused career path anchors motivation, organizes time, and stabilizes earning potential. But clarity is only powerful if you practice it. Quick exercise: grab a piece of paper or open your notes app, and in the next 60 seconds, write down the one niche you could commit to exploring this month. Not the perfect lifelong choice, not the ideal resume phrase, just one lane worth investing focused energy into right now. That single act forces you to translate abstract ideas into direction, which is the heart of clarity. Because once that lane is in view, the next challenge becomes obvious. Productivity still strains when financial pressure clouds every decision. If career gives your day structure, money determines whether you can sustain it without distraction. And unless you establish financial clarity, even the sharpest career focus can be undone by the weight of financial anxiety. Money without misery, financial clarity. Money is the second critical area where clarity transforms how productive you can be. Too many people still think productivity is tied to earning as much as possible, working longer hours, filling their schedules with side projects, and using income size as their main metric of success. But in reality, money itself doesn't guarantee focus or security. What really makes the difference is financial clarity, knowing exactly how much you need, when you'll need it, and what every dollar is meant to do. Without those definitions, finances become a constant source of low-grade stress. With them, money stops being a distraction and becomes a support system for everything else you're building. Financial clarity doesn't mean chasing bigger numbers. It means setting a clear cash flow structure that matches your lifestyle and goals. Without a framework, even higher earnings turn chaotic. More bills, more accounts, more restless thoughts. With a framework, you strip back the noise. Bills run automatically. Savings happen in the background. Investments compound quietly. Instead of burning attention on daily balances, you let the system take care of itself. The paradox is that peace of mind comes not from how much wealth you stack, but from how deliberately you organize the money you already have. Consider two professionals earning about the same salary. The first spends evenings shifting money between accounts, refreshing banking apps, and worrying late into the night about whether she can afford her upcoming trip or cover an unexpected repair. She looks busy, but her time is consumed by confusion. The second professional uses automation, utilities on auto-pay, a fixed monthly transfer into savings, and a short weekly check-in to adjust plans. Over years, her net worth grows steadily while spending only a fraction of the time thinking about money. The difference isn't luck or discipline, it's clarity. One obsesses without ever feeling secure. The other feels relaxed because the system runs itself. This distinction matters because financial stress doesn't stay contained. It seeps into every other area of life, particularly work. Many younger workers today cite money anxiety as one of the top distractions during working hours. Workplace well-being research consistently notes that financial pressure ranks among the biggest stress drivers for employees. The result is that people are trying to do cognitively demanding work while part of their brain is stuck calculating bills and balances. No productivity strategy can compete with that level of background noise. And it doesn't take dramatic situations to feel the drain. Everyday habits make this obvious. People refreshing the value of their cryptocurrency portfolios every 10 minutes, endlessly scanning stock prices, or doom-scrolling personal finance blogs without action. These routines create the illusion of control, but they're just sophisticated forms of avoidance. That constant micro-anxiety takes the same toll as checking your work email every 90 seconds. It leaves less energy for deep work. A simple principle flips the script. Clarity beats complexity. A clear money system requires 3 steps. Define how much is enough, set a schedule for when you need it, and assign a function for each pool of money. Once decisions are set, financial noise fades. You don't waste Sunday night worrying about surprise bills because they're already automated. You don't argue with yourself about whether you're saving enough each month because the transfer has been scheduled in advance. By shrinking money decisions, you free up mental bandwidth for work that actually matters. To make this practical, set aside one 15-minute slot each week for a finance ritual. In those minutes, confirm bills are on auto-pay, move one line of money into savings, and allocate one line for discretionary spending like dining out or fun purchases. That's it. Done consistently, this habit builds calm. Small systems like these deliver far more clarity than hours of improvisation. They keep money working in the background so your day isn't clogged by constant calculations. When overtime comes up, the pattern makes a big difference. Without clarity, those extra hours turn into temporary relief. The paycheck gets absorbed into badly tracked expenses, and the cycle continues. But with clarity, the same extra income actually sticks, whether it builds an emergency fund, funds a known future purchase, or accelerates long-term investments. The visible result is 2 professionals who clock equal effort, but end up in wildly different positions after a year. One is still restless, the other is calmer and wealthier. Employer studies have even measured this effect. In some wellness programs, companies that helped employees reduce financial stress saw not just higher engagement, but measurable drops in claims related to stress-driven health issues. When money anxiety comes down, productivity and well-being both rise. That isn't surprising. Fewer worries mean more focus, and focus compounds into results. Another overlooked payoff comes in decision-making confidence. Clear finances mean you no longer have to accept every quick-paying gig purely to soothe insecurity. You can align opportunities with a bigger career plan instead of scattering your energy. For someone who has already clarified their career path, this is powerful protection. It keeps financial decisions from pulling them back into reactive mode. And when career and money clarity align, both accelerate instead of competing for attention. It's important to note that clarity doesn't mean keeping dozens of budget categories or tracking stock movement every morning. In fact, the more complex you make your system, the less likely you'll follow it. The goal is to give every dollar a simple role: bills, savings, investments, or discretionary spending, and then automate as much as possible. Simplicity sustains behavior. When every decision is pre-made through structure, you don't waste willpower repeating the same questions daily. Once money is clarified, the effect is immediate. Cognitive space opens up. Stress signals settle down. Mental fatigue shrinks because your brain isn't constantly reprocessing the same unsolved problems. Work sessions feel lighter, not because the workload decreases, but because your energy is no longer hijacked by financial noise. Instead of reacting to uncertainty, you operate with a clearer head, and tasks that used to feel heavy get finished faster. This is what money without misery really means. Finances positioned to serve your productivity, not sabotage it. The payoff isn't luxury or extravagance. It's attention you can finally devote to what matters. Money becomes a quiet, stable structure in the background, and you gain the freedom to focus on progress. But clarity around money is only part of the picture. Even with financial stress under control, you still face the question of physical capacity. The truth is, productivity doesn't just rely on mental focus or financial security, it runs on energy. If your body runs down, your output stalls no matter how organized you are. And that's why the next focus is on health as the real engine behind sustained productivity. Energy over hours, health as a productivity engine. Why do the people who seem to finish the most work also look calmer, take breaks more freely, and avoid exhaustion? Their approach challenges the common assumption that productivity is about piling on hours, draining energy drinks, or pushing through fatigue. Studies of top performers across industries keep showing the same conclusion: they stay healthy. They prioritize rest, they move their bodies regularly, and they bring energy into their work instead of depletion. Productivity doesn't come from grinding longer. It comes from how much usable energy you can sustain day after day. Sleep is the first and most overlooked part of that equation. Adequate rest directly supports memory, decision-making, and creative thinking. When sleep is cut short, errors increase, moods swing, and concentration weakens, making each work hour less valuable. Movement is the second input. Even small bouts of activity throughout the day improve circulation, oxygen supply to the brain, and overall cognitive sharpness. Research on workplace well-being consistently finds that short breaks for movement boost attention and decision quality more than simply extending hours at a desk. The third factor is stimulants. Caffeine or similar aids may provide a temporary lift, but relying on them to mask fatigue reduces long-term performance. They create a cycle of short bursts followed by bigger crashes, leaving less energy over time. This shift became clear in the story of one founder who tried the extreme route: 14-hour days, back-to-back calls, snacking on takeout, and living off coffee. At first, the pace looked impressive, but attention slipped, health declined, and results slowed. Only when they scaled back to a shorter schedule, prioritized real sleep, and added recovery time did output actually rise. The same work took fewer hours because they could focus, think clearly, and execute with precision. The lesson wasn't about doing less. It was about restoring energy, so each hour mattered more. Many professionals fall into the same trap. They see exhaustion as proof of effort. They treat the third or fourth cup of coffee as fuel, not realizing it signals an energy system already overloaded. Stimulants can help in emergencies, but as a regular strategy, they mask the problem instead of fixing it. The body needs recovery, not constant compensation. By ignoring that, people trade away consistent productivity for short-term appearances of activity. The encouraging part is that the changes which matter most are smaller than people expect. Productivity advice once painted an intimidating picture: intense gym routines, rigid sleep schedules, elaborate tracking. In 2025, the science supports a simpler message. Short, manageable actions still bring measurable improvements. Even brief movement during the workday raises focus and reduces fatigue. Likewise, protecting a steady 7-8 hour sleep window creates sharper thinking and more reliable output the next morning. These factors compound. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. You need to stack small advantages consistently. Think of it as protecting the body's energy engine. Every cognitive task, every creative decision relies on cellular energy processes. If these are stretched thin through lack of movement, broken sleep, or constant stress, no calendar management technique can make up for the loss. When those systems are supported, attention comes more naturally. You sit down to work and stay present without battling constant distraction. This is less about lifestyle branding and more about function, how well your body supplies the energy that makes focus possible. Workplace research reinforces this. Employees who build predictable recovery routines not only sustain higher performance, but also report stronger engagement and less burnout. The same studies show concentration levels drop significantly when sleep and movement decline, regardless of new tools or process changes. The body acts as the real baseline system for output. Protect it and productivity compounds. Neglect it and every other strategy falters. To make this practical, one easy framework is 3 10-minute movement breaks spread across the workday, combined with keeping sleep within a consistent 7-8 hour window. This isn't rigid or extreme. Walking during calls, stretching mid-morning, or stepping outside in the afternoon can provide the kind of reset that produces hours of clearer thinking afterward. The goal isn't perfection, but consistency. Over weeks, this routine frees hours of wasted fatigue and helps you sustain quality effort without collapse. Returning to the founder's example, their breakthrough wasn't about pushing harder. It came when they realized energy was the missing ingredient. By protecting rest, moving regularly, and limiting stimulants, they doubled their effectiveness in fewer hours. Their shift reflects the larger truth confirmed in study after study: managing energy beats maximizing hours. The choice is simple: productivity follows energy, and energy follows health. These changes don't demand radical reinvention. They ask only for small habits with sustained payoff. Sleep as preparation, not lost time. Movement as fuel for focus. Moderation with stimulants so they remain a tool instead of a crutch. Apply these consistently, and the difference becomes obvious. Work feels lighter, concentration steadier, and progress continuous rather than scattered. With energy stabilized, a new set of possibilities opens. Instead of spending willpower to fight through fatigue, you can direct that capacity toward learning and deliberate improvement. This builds a bridge to the next priority: how growth compounds not through giant leaps, but through small, daily choices that accumulate into extraordinary progress over months and years. Clarity in personal growth, continuous 0.1% improvement. Personal growth becomes much easier to navigate once you stop thinking of it as a single dramatic leap and start seeing it as a matter of clarity. Clarity in this area means recognizing that sustainable progress is built on small, continuous steps, the kind so minor they almost feel too simple to matter. But when those steps repeat, the effect builds silently in the background until your capabilities look entirely different. This isn't speculation. It's mathematics applied to habits. If you commit to improving yourself by just 0.1% each day, those little lifts compound like interest. Multiply that daily gain across one full year, and you finish not just slightly ahead, but almost 1.5 times better than when you began, about 1.44 times more capable. The mistake many make is chasing giant overhauls. They sign up for drastic routines, pledge to fix themselves in one grand gesture, or try to master a complex skill in a weekend. These bursts of ambition usually collapse under their own weight. High performers, by contrast, anchor their growth to marginal gains. They understand that improvement that sticks is built from increments the system can actually absorb. Clarity isn't about picking the flashiest goal, but committing to the scale of change you can sustain and repeat until compounding transforms it into something substantial. This idea is captured powerfully by the story of British cycling underperformance director Dave Brailsford. For years, the team had struggled to make an impact on the international stage. Instead of demanding overnight transformation, Brailsford introduced the philosophy of aggregation of marginal gains. The idea was simple: find tiny areas, bike seat comfort, gear efficiency, recovery protocols, even hand-washing techniques, and improve each one by a fraction of a percent. No single change was dramatic, but when added together, they radically shifted outcomes. Within a decade, the British team was not just competitive but dominant, winning record numbers of medals and Tour de France titles. The lesson applies far beyond sport. Compounded increments take longer to reveal themselves, but their effect is exponential compared to unsustainable bursts. That example might feel distant if you're not an athlete, but the same principle works in professional and personal life. Imagine someone who wants to improve their communication skills. They might be tempted to book an intensive week-long seminar, cram information, and hope it changes everything. More often than not, they lose momentum after returning to normal routines. Now compare that with a different approach. Every day, they take 5 minutes to rewrite one awkward email, rehearse a short phrase before meetings, or study one effective presentation snippet. On a single day, these seem trivial. But over 3 months, the improvement in tone, confidence, and effectiveness becomes visible. Like the cycling team, they don't leap forward at once, but arrive at a new level through steady increments. The power of daily gains is that they don't trigger resistance. Big leaps overwhelm because they demand everything at once, which the brain interprets as threat and strain. Small adjustments slip past that barrier. Repetition layers skill, and skill eventually builds comfort. Whether the target is health, professional expertise, or a creative pursuit, continuous 0.1% steps align with how learning and adaptation truly work. Every compound effect creates both capability and durability, qualities that ambitious sprints can't replicate. Acknowledging this also diffuses the common excuse of not having enough time. Large growth projects feel impossible to squeeze into packed schedules, but most people can reclaim 5 minutes. Those minutes might otherwise vanish into trivial distractions like refreshing a feed or skimming content that leaves no lasting trace. Redirected into one small practice, those same slivers add up. The clear decision is not to re-engineer your life entirely, but to deliberately assign at least one brief action each day toward growth that matters. The consistent repetition then becomes your edge. The psychology of this approach is as important as the outcomes. At first, 0.1% feels almost invisible, but when you watch these tiny deposits accumulate, confidence grows. You stop questioning whether change is possible and start trusting that process beats willpower. That shift in mindset has its own compounding effect. Once you believe in the reliability of marginal gains, you look for them everywhere. One skill slightly sharpened, one process tidied, one interaction refined. Clarity here doesn't only mean knowing what to improve. It means believing you can harness improvement without burning out. The simplicity of marginal gains also helps separate genuine progress from the noise of fad-driven self-improvement. In environments where new tools and methods roll out endlessly, clarity keeps you grounded. You don't need to chase every trend. You only need to ask, what is the smallest improvement I can sustain today? Tiny steps might not trend on social media, but they build advantages strong enough to last through the constant churn of 2025. To put this into practice, pick one 5-minute habit you can return to every day this week. It might be reviewing a micro skill in your career, writing down a single reflection before bed, or spending a few minutes rehearsing an explanation of your work. Hold it small, but hold it consistent. By the end of a week, you'll feel the rhythm. By the end of a month, you'll see movement. And with a year of repeating 5-minute deposits, the compounding will be undeniable. When viewed on this scale, personal growth stops being intimidating. You aren't forced into grand resolutions you can't maintain. You aren't trapped in frustration when early enthusiasm fades. Instead, you operate inside an incremental process that is both achievable and powerful. Marginal clarity strips away distraction and replaces it with steady returns. That makes growth practical in fast-moving times, whether in skill development, emotional resilience, or creative endurance. And while the benefits begin with your own capacity, they don't stop there. The compounding you gain personally soon becomes visible in how you show up in your work, in your choices, and in the direction your career and finances take. Over months, this trajectory creates new credibility that eventually influences opportunities and income more than any short burst of intensity ever could. But growth is never just individual. The next multiplier comes from the connections you strengthen or ignore. Human relationships act as amplifiers for individual progress, shaping how far and how fast those personal gains translate into real-world outcomes. The relationship factor, productivity through connection. There's a common picture of the lone genius, the individual who shuns company, works in silence, and creates extraordinary results entirely through personal effort. It makes for a good story, but the reality behind consistent productivity looks very different. Isolated workers often peak quickly and stall. they lack the resilience, perspective, and creative energy that emerge through human connection. By contrast, those who consistently reach higher levels of performance deliberately build and protect strong relationships. They don't collect a crowd of weak ties. They choose a small circle of connections that matter, and the focus they place on those relationships becomes a form of leverage, making their work easier, faster, and more impactful than solitary effort ever allows. Clarity in relationships operates exactly like clarity in work or money. Without direction, people scatter energy across every chat, every invite, and every request in the name of being networked. It feels active but produces little. In the flood of activity, the few connections that could genuinely support long-term growth get neglected. Productive achievers treat social energy as a finite resource. They ask hard questions. Who amplifies my work? Who challenges me in ways that make me sharper? Whose trust and collaboration truly matter? By protecting those ties, they avoid social noise and invest in relationships with lasting value. Think of a remote manager leading a distributed team. One approach is to attend open networking events, send out dozens of generic messages, and juggle dozens of introductions every week. It sounds busy and might even look impressive on a calendar, but most interactions vanish without substance. Compare that to the same manager who invests consistently in 5 key partners: mentors, collaborators, or committed team members. Over time, those few partners strengthen trust, expand opportunities, and accelerate projects because communication deepens. The productivity difference is dramatic. Many shallow ties fade quickly, while a few strong ones compound. Digital life makes this distinction critical. Responding to every ping, message, or post may simulate connection, but it drains time with little return. Clarity in relationships is about recognizing the gap between busy connection and value connection. One fills hours with activity, the other builds trust and long-term momentum. The achiever avoids pretending the two are equal. Evidence supports this selective approach. Research on workplace well-being shows that meaningful recognition and strong connections measurably increase both productivity and retention. Employees who consistently receive genuine recognition from managers, for example, report higher engagement and stronger commitment to their work. In practice, that means relationships grounded in trust and value don't just feel good. They drive measurable performance improvements. For independent professionals, the same principle applies. Quality connections improve motivation and resilience, even in highly digital environments. Once this becomes clear, the principle is simple but powerful. Choose your circle intentionally. Many people let relationships form randomly, responding to whoever occupies the inbox or pops up in a feed. That randomness fills days with shallow ties. The focused individual, on the other hand, identifies the handful of relationships that matter, protects them with attention, and allows the rest to fade. It isn't about limiting yourself for its own sake, it's about multiplying leverage. A trusted collaborator who invests fully can accelerate your productivity more than 50 casual contacts who barely recall what you do. Look at the storylines behind prominent leaders in business, science, or the arts. The myth is that they achieved breakthroughs entirely alone. Scratch beneath the surface, and those apparent solo figures almost always rely on carefully constructed networks, mentors who guided them, peers who challenged them, or collaborators who supported their projects. The architecture of those ties is what sustains them through challenges. Without them, even the most ambitious individuals face ceilings they can't break through alone. That's why investing in key connections matters. It is not a side task or an indulgence separate from productivity. It is the base that allows productivity to expand without collapse. The challenge lies in differentiating between engaging interactions that feel lively in the moment and genuine relationships that create long-term returns. Honesty here is crucial. Many large events and casual networks amount to social busywork. Selectivity enables you to say no to those diversions and yes to building fewer, deeper bonds. The reward is more time, lower stress, and higher quality outcomes. Take again the example of the remote leader refining their network. Instead of splitting energy across dozens of uncommitted ties, they invest in 5 trusted relationships. Very quickly, projects begin to run smoother. Communication improves, obstacles shrink faster, and their team spends less time untangling misalignment. That clarity delivers practical gains. More hours of focus reclaimed each week and far stronger returns from each invested conversation. The real paradox is that narrowing to fewer connections often expands reach. A small circle chosen deliberately becomes the multiplier for output, creativity, and even opportunity. Productivity here is not about removing people from the picture. It is about choosing which people matter most. And when that discipline shapes decisions, output compounds. To make this actionable, name 2 people who accelerate your work, then commit to reaching out to them this week. This single act of strengthening targeted relationships carries more weight than juggling 10 new introductions. That follow-through anchors the principle. Productivity through connection comes from investing in the right people, not from scattering attention widely. And once the foundation of strong relationships is in place, there is a further shift to consider. Productivity is not only about what you gain from others, but also about what you choose to give back. The next step is to recognize how contribution itself can act as a multiplier, turning support for others into a surprising source of strength for your own work. Contribution clarity, giving as a productivity amplifier. It often runs against intuition, but one of the most effective ways to strengthen your own productivity is to contribute intentionally to others. At first glance, mentorship, coaching, or sharing knowledge seems like it would only subtract from your available time. Taken superficially, these activities look like a distraction from personal goals. Yet in practice, supporting others often sharpens your expertise, forces clarity in your own thinking, and accelerates growth for both sides. Explaining concepts demands that you structure ideas more clearly than you would for yourself, and each explanation exposes gaps you wouldn't otherwise notice. Those gaps close quickly once you begin guiding someone else, and in the process, your own competence multiplies. Contribution clarity means recognizing this exchange and shaping it into a system that strengthens productivity rather than eroding it. Consider a professional who sets aside part of their week to mentor colleagues. They spend a small block of time helping others think through processes or avoid mistakes they once made themselves. The act of teaching compels them to refine their explanations, spot flaws in their reasoning, and tighten their practices. Over months, their own decision-making becomes faster, and their expertise becomes recognized more broadly. Coworkers begin associating them not just with individual performance, but with being a resource who creates value across the team. That reputation often leads to new opportunities, projects, recognition, and influence that rarely emerge in isolation. Research supports this dynamic. Experimental studies show that people who actively mentor or engage in recognition practices tend to raise productivity not only for others, but also for themselves. Teams that adopt structured knowledge sharing see fewer repeated errors, faster onboarding, and stronger collaboration. Likewise, employees who take part in recognition programs often report higher engagement, which translates into more consistent outcomes. Contribution, when designed with clarity, is not a nice gesture or an afterthought. It's a tested mechanism for multiplying both personal and collective results. The key distinction lies in focus. Not all forms of giving produce returns. Jumping into every small request around you may feel generous, but scattered assistance quickly dissolves your focus and breeds dependence in others. Contribution clarity avoids this trap by placing boundaries and designing contribution like any other system. The most effective givers keep 3 principles in place. Choose who to mentor or support, assign a specific time budget, and set a goal for each interaction. These rules keep giving intentional. They turn it from a reactive drain into a sustainable habit that strengthens both your productivity and that of your peers. Take a comparison. One employee tries to help anyone who asks, dropping their work constantly to fix last-minute requests. While they appear generous, their own projects slip, and colleagues continue leaning on them because the support has no structure. Another employee blocks 1 regular hour each week to meet with juniors in their department. Each session is short, focused, and tied to a clear outcome, solving one persistent problem or sharpening a skill. Over time, the second employee shares more knowledge with less stress and builds a reputation as a reliable mentor without compromising their own role. Both give, but only the second follows contribution clarity. This is why clarity, once again, is everything. Giving without design collapses like other unclear areas of life. It becomes messy, reactive, and exhausting. but defining who, when, and how you contribute protects your energy. It ensures that your effort multiplies instead of scattering. When handled this way, contribution turns into a flywheel. Each session you lead sparks independent progress in others, which reduces interruptions later. The time you invest once returns again and again, because it eliminates repeated inefficiencies across your team or network. There's also a deeper identity shift that happens when contribution is approached with clarity. Your value stops being defined only by your output and begins to include your influence on the growth of others. That shift has practical consequences. Coworkers and collaborators start recognizing you as someone who improves the system around them, not just someone who checks boxes. This builds trust and credibility, two assets that hold tremendous weight in career opportunities. Contribution clarity expands your reach because others see your work spreading beyond your desk. At the organizational level, the pattern becomes even clearer. When companies encourage structured sharing, whether through mentoring systems, knowledge libraries, or recognition frameworks, they often see productivity rise more dramatically than when they simply add new tools. The reason is straightforward. Instead of isolated efficiency, the group learns faster as a whole. Each individual draws on the experience of others, and the cycle repeats. Contribution clarity is not only about personal growth, but about creating an environment where knowledge continuously compounds. The balance, again, rests in boundaries. Without them, contribution quickly shifts into overextension. With them, contribution becomes sustainable. Practically, this means deciding upfront how many people you can mentor, reserving specific slots, and ensuring each conversation has a clear objective. A small number of high-quality contributions will always outweigh endless scattered assistance. Clarity ensures the energy you give returns value rather than draining it away. To translate this into immediate action, here's a simple experiment. Add one 30-minute mentoring slot to your calendar next week. Decide on a single topic you're willing to share, whether it's a process you've mastered, a common mistake you know how to avoid, or a skill you've built over time. Invite someone who would clearly benefit. Go into the call with one goal, guide them, and step out. Notice the effect afterwards, not only in their progress, but in the way the exercise sharpens your own thinking. In the long run, contribution clarity frees energy as much as it expands impact. Reactive requests lose their pull because you already know where your support belongs. Mentoring or sharing becomes energizing, not heavy, because the framework prevents drain. With this clarity, productivity moves beyond an individual game. Your effort echoes forward through the growth of others, and their momentum folds back into your own. Outward support and inward progress align instead of competing. But even with purposeful contribution, there is still one more layer needed. External systems, your work, your finances, your health, your relationships, even your giving, lose consistency if inner stability is missing. Without an internal anchor, today's environment of endless inputs can scatter your attention no matter how carefully the rest of your framework is designed. At this point, the challenge turns from outward clarity to the deeper clarity of inner growth, where focus is protected at its core. Spiritual and inner growth as focus anchor. In 2025, daily life is shaped by constant distraction. People wake up to phones buzzing with alerts, algorithm-driven news feeds, and messages waiting before they even get out of bed. Work apps bleed into personal time, entertainment platforms refresh endlessly, and the sense of always-on attention leaves little space for pause. This environment has no natural stopping point. Notifications layer on more notifications, and the line between working hours and downtime has worn thin. The result is fractured focus, short bursts of reactivity replacing the ability to sustain deep attention. Once deep attention disappears, no tactic or digital tool can fully rebuild productivity. Against this background, inner clarity is not a luxury. It acts like a focus anchor, a stable point that allows you to hold attention when the noise surges. Inner growth here doesn't need to mean religion or ideology. It means finding a personal routine or practice that gives your mind a reset each day. Without it, digital interruption writes your agenda for you hour by hour. People without this anchor often feel restless, scattered, and strangely fatigued even when they appear to be busy. Those who have built a practice of inner clarity, by contrast, stay calmer. They see the same flood of messages, but they can concentrate on what matters without dissolving into distraction. You can see the difference in something as small as a morning ritual. one professional recognized that checking a phone first thing every morning drained entire mornings. What started as a quick peek stretched into 30 minutes of scrolling and answering others' demands before any real work began. Replacing that habit with just 10 minutes of quiet breathing and writing down their top priority for the day created a clear shift. Over time, they noticed their mornings stabilized and hours of deep work became available again. Many studies on digital wellness confirm this pattern. Short, consistent breaks from screens, whether through quiet breathing, journaling, or even brief walks, improve attention and resilience to stress more reliably than trying to power through interruptions. It's important not to mistake these practices for another productivity gimmick. Marketing often portrays mindfulness as exotic retreats, costly apps, or pre-packaged wellness kits. But effectiveness doesn't require anything polished or expensive. What matters is deliberately inserting moments of pause before noise takes hold. Some people find benefit in journaling a single sentence each morning. Others step outside without their phone for a walk, while others simply sit with a timer for a few mindful minutes. Even digital wellness apps can help, but they often come loaded with constant prompts and alerts that only replicate the same problem. Real inner clarity removes the need for external prodding. It's about directing your focus yourself instead of waiting for another device to remind you. Think of this as infrastructure for attention. Productivity is usually described in terms of outward results: tasks complete, projects advancing, income earned. But all of those depend on the invisible foundation of focus. Without the inner anchor, structured work systems fall apart the moment distraction rises. Calendars, project boards, or time trackers repeat the same cycle, abandoned halfway through the day because the user's concentration is already fragmented. With regular practices of inner clarity, attention behaves differently. Distractions still happen, but they lose their ability to hijack entire hours. That difference, repeated across weeks and months, adds up to stronger productivity than adding an extra app or an extra hour of effort. Another dimension of inner clarity is emotional stability. We don't just receive endless tasks, you also receive endless moods from digital feeds. Much of the information people consume is designed to provoke anxiety, anger, or comparison. And once emotional energy is drained by those loops, work quality plunges. You know the feeling: stuck in frustration from some passing headline or discouraged after scrolling through curated updates from peers. Inner clarity shifts the equation. Small mindfulness habits, moments of breathing, or pauses offline give you space to notice these emotional pulls without getting stuck in them. Instead of spending hours replaying worry, you return attention to work faster. This calm doesn't erase negative input, but it reduces its grip. Those who keep this reserve complete meaningful tasks more efficiently, while those without it lose energy to ruminating. Some still argue that inner clarity feels too soft for professional work. Yet workplaces themselves have confirmed its value. Many organizations now build brief reflection breaks into their culture, encourage device-free check-ins, or offer quiet spaces for centering. The reason isn't philosophy, it's practical gain. Teams that use these pauses bounce back faster from interruptions, manage project stress more effectively, and collaborate without constant derailment. Research on digital wellness highlights the same trend. Regular, quiet practices, not constant grinding, produce clearer attention and resilience. For individuals, it reduces wasted hours of reactivity. For groups, it creates steadier, less distracted collaboration. Crucially, the effect compounds over time. Burnout usually follows a pattern of constant reactivity leading to exhaustion, then collapse. The brain never fully rests when it's constantly flipping between alerts and effort, even outside of work hours. Inner clarity flips that process. A simple daily anchor gives the mind real recovery spaces. Instead of scraping through until breakdown, energy smooths out and reserves last across weeks of challenging work. This is what separates people who can maintain steady output for years from those who flare briefly before quitting or disengaging. Clarity here is a resilient system, not a side benefit. The form that clarity takes can vary widely. For some, silence and sitting practice works. For others, light journaling, controlled breathing, or undistracted walking outdoors serves as the reset. What matters is that the practice is simple, repeatable, and separated from constant screens. You don't have to believe in anything beyond protecting focus. The logic is straightforward. Productivity depends on attention. Attention survives when protected, and protection happens through routines that keep the mind stable before noise arrives. The practical starting point is smaller than most assume. You don't need long sessions or dramatic changes. Set a timer for 10 minutes each morning, stay device-free, and use those minutes for any calming anchor, a few deep breaths, a short line of journaling, or simply sitting quietly. Try this daily for 7 days and watch whether your concentration strengthens. It's low risk, but the potential gain for productivity is significant. Begin there and let consistency carry the habit forward. With this foundation in place, the final question is how people translate clarity into results. Because even when inner focus is strong, some professionals seem to finish earlier, handle fewer hours, and still get more done. The difference isn't only inside. It comes from external systems that turn clarity into leverage. And that leads directly to the next stage: why some people manage to free their time while achieving more, while others remain stuck working late into the night. Digital wellness, outsourcing, AI, and focus time. Digital wellness today depends less on raw effort and more on how deliberately you design systems around your time. One of the clearest differences between those who struggle with constant overwork and those who consistently maintain balance is how they use 3 tools together: outsourcing, artificial intelligence, and protected focus blocks. These aren't abstract ideas. They are practical levers that free hours and preserve energy while ensuring the most important tasks actually move forward. The first lever is outsourcing. In the past, it was associated mainly with corporations handing off large projects overseas. Now, individuals apply it at a personal level. The principle is straightforward. If a task doesn't require your unique knowledge or decision-making, it doesn't need you at the center. Some people hire virtual assistants for scheduling or use gig services to handle errands. Others delegate technical support, design tweaks, or data entry. The effect is the same, clearing space for higher value work. People often hesitate, worrying that outsourcing is indulgent or insecure, but the trade-off is obvious. Those who transfer repetitive tasks consistently recover several hours each week. Over time, that means dozens of hours redirected towards strategy, creation, or rest, instead of chores better handled by someone else. The second lever is AI. In 2025, smart professionals stop asking whether AI threatens their job and start asking how it can serve their work. The reality is that AI is well suited for the messy base layer that drains cognitive energy, summarizing documents, transforming notes into drafts, structuring spreadsheets, or generating outlines. Used well, it reshapes hours of slog into minutes of reviewing, editing, and improving. Instead of replacing expertise, it opens bandwidth for more complex thinking. Surveys and experimental studies confirm this effect. Generative AI users regularly report measurable time savings and faster task completion on routine work. The gap then grows quickly. Those who embrace it free hours that can be applied to creative or strategic decisions, while those who resist remain buried under the same low-value grind. Focus is the third and most decisive lever because recovered hours only matter if they remain intact. Without boundaries, outsourced time or accelerated work evaporates into distractions. That's why many achievers now build their weeks around 90-minute focus blocks. These cycles are long enough to enter deep concentration while short enough to avoid exhaustion. Breaks separate each block, giving the brain space to reset. What has changed in 2025 is the rise of digital firewalls that reinforce the habit. Tools can now shut access to messaging platforms, email, or endlessly looping feeds while you work. This removes the burden of willpower. Instead of battling every ping, the environment itself protects attention. The simple choice to guard 2 or 3 of these blocks per day often increases actual progress more than adding several extra unstructured hours of work at night. The strength of these approaches shows up in practice. Consider 2 professionals working from home with similar calendars. One insists on doing everything themselves: emails, formatting, invoices, research, and multitasks constantly between tabs. They stay online 10 or 12 hours a day, yet still feel behind. The other outsources a slice of admin work, runs drafts through AI to handle first passes, and protects just 3 deep focus sessions weekly. Oddly enough, they appear calmer while finishing more. The difference isn't extra talent or magical tools. It's the intentional use of systems built around outsourcing, AI, and focus time that transforms the same raw hours into higher returns. Sustainability is another hidden benefit. Working harder without system support eventually leads to burnout. Fatigue erodes decision-making, and shallow distractions eat into productivity. By contrast, structured systems provide stability. Outsourcing prevents mental fatigue from low-level tasks. AI reduces the repetitive grind. Focus routines guard attention for priorities that matter. This makes productivity renewable. Instead of spiking and collapsing, output holds steady across weeks or months. That stability compounds the effect of every system in place. It's also worth addressing a misconception. Many assume that highly productive people are simply better multitaskers. The reality is almost the opposite. Research shows multitasking reduces efficiency and increases mistakes. Top performers use outsourcing and AI precisely so they can concentrate on one central task without distraction. Their calmness is not because they juggle more, but because they deliberately carry less. Outsiders may think they have endless hours, but in truth, they defend their focus so tightly that each hour carries several times the weight of an ordinary one. Even small experiments demonstrate this. Automating email triage with AI shrinks inbox clutter significantly. Hiring out basic data entry eliminates an invisible drain. Setting up a 90-minute window with blocked notifications makes a single work session more valuable than an entire afternoon of multitasking. People often imagine these advantages are minor until they add them together. One routine change seems small, but several layers together create a schedule that feels lighter while producing more. The appearance of extra hours is really just reclaimed time finally used for its true purpose. The logic becomes hard to ignore. Outsource what doesn't demand your voice. Use AI for the groundwork that distracts from thinking. Protect focus with timed, distraction-free sessions. Each step is simple enough by itself, but combined, they multiply results. Productivity no longer comes from pushing later into the night. It comes from designing systems that remove what weakens attention and preserve it for what matters. People who adopt this approach consistently report steadier progress, more energy, and in many cases, shorter workdays that achieve more than the marathon grind. If you want to begin applying this without overwhelm, start small. Automate or outsource one recurring task this week, something like scheduling, data entry, or ordering supplies. Then next week, carve out 2 90-minute focus blocks, defended against interruptions with either tools or firm boundaries. Simple steps compound quickly. Try it, notice the results, and share your progress in the comments as you experiment with your own system design. Once the systems are in place, though, there's still a subtle trap that holds people back. Even with outsourcing, AI, and deep work, many professionals cling to ideas about productivity that weaken their results. Some still assume it means doing more, doing it faster, or chasing the perfect app. These widely held beliefs carry more damage than missed tools ever could, and they explain why so many remain stuck despite access to better methods. Destroying productivity myths. For all the systems, tools, and research we've covered, one of the biggest roadblocks to real progress is the set of myths people quietly carry about what productivity even means. These myths shape decisions every day, and until they're challenged, they pull effort in the wrong direction. To see why so many professionals remain exhausted despite endless effort, it helps to expose the 3 myths that sit at the center of the problem: multitasking, extended hours, and tool chasing. The first is the belief that multitasking works. It gives the sensation of progress, typing an email while half listening to a meeting and quickly checking texts on the side. The activity feels full, but the brain isn't designed to process in parallel. Instead, it switches rapidly between tasks, and every switch carries a cognitive cost. Research from the American Psychological Association notes that this switching slows task completion and raises error rates significantly. What looks like moving 3 things forward at once is usually moving each of them more slowly and with more mistakes. The time lost may not show in the moment, but repeated all day, it compounds into hours of wasted energy. The second myth is that longer hours mean better results. This one is deeply ingrained because cultures of overwork treat exhaustion as proof of seriousness. Staying late, working weekends, and pushing through fatigue feels like dedication. Yet evidence from decades of work-hour research tells a different story. Beyond a certain point, output per hour collapses. Creativity falters, problem-solving declines, and health deteriorates. What gets produced in the 11th or 12th hour often has to be revised or abandoned, while the individual is left depleted and less able to focus the next day. Over time, the pattern doesn't elevate performance, it erodes it. Many people have learned this firsthand, putting in month after month of late nights only to realize their actual results have leveled off or declined. The third myth is that the missing link for productivity must be the newest app. App stores are lined with planners, trackers, and tools promising to finally solve the chaos. The logic feels convincing. If your system isn't working, maybe the right software will fix it. In practice, the effect often runs the other way. Each new tool adds another layer of menus, rules, syncs, and logins. Instead of simplicity, there's more complexity, more decisions, and more switching between platforms. Digital wellness research shows that too many overlapping tools increase decision fatigue and raise stress, leaving people more distracted than before. Hours disappear not into meaningful work, but into configuring, adjusting, and second-guessing how to organize it. When taken together, these myths share the same trait. They appeal to surface logic but collapse under evidence. Multitasking feels efficient but drains focus. Longer hours look ambitious but produce diminishing returns. New apps offer control but often create clutter. They stay alive not because they work, but because they are easy to accept. If you feel behind, of course the instinct is to add more time, add more effort, or add more tools. But this instinct is precisely what keeps productivity stuck at the level of busyness instead of progress. Breaking free starts with recognition. If the same loops keep showing up, days spent jumping between tasks, weeks lost to fatigue, or months trialing new systems without traction, the problem likely isn't effort. It's reliance on myths presented as common sense. Once seen clearly, they lose their grip. Productivity need not mean scattering attention, grinding late, or forever hunting the perfect app. Each myth replaces clarity with noise, and every time someone buys the illusion, focus slips further away. What replaces them is a model anchored in clarity. Clarity is what turns effort into results instead of fatigue. One 90-minute focus block aimed at a defined priority produces more than an entire afternoon of scattered multitasking. Short, structured hours built around priorities lead to stronger outcomes than a week of dragging through exhaustion. A single, simple tool, used in alignment with your goals, amplifies more than 5 overlapping apps without direction. Productivity in 2025 favors those who stop chasing easy myths and instead identify where their attention should flow first. You don't need to look further than the highest performers of today. Across business, creative work, and science, the people accomplishing the most are rarely the ones compulsively multitasking, sleeping in their office, or constantly switching software platforms. They are the ones who define priorities tightly, protect attention during limited windows, and mobilize tools only after the goals are clear. From the outside, their pace looks calm, almost unhurried. Yet the results suggest multiplied effort. The secret isn't extra energy, it's the absence of wasted energy. They aren't propping up myths that drain them. Dismantling these habits frees not just time but mental space. Without multitasking, the mind can sink fully into complex work. Without marathon overwork, energy recovers so tomorrow's output is fresh. Without endless app experiments, structure stays simple and attention attaches to real objectives instead of gadgets. This is what productivity looks like when stripped of myths. Not noisy, not scattered, but deliberate and multiplying over time. The message is that technology or hard work are useless. Both matter, but they only matter within the framework of clarity. Tools amplify defined goals. Hours support energy, but only when balanced. Focus blocks multiply results, but only when aligned with what matters. The myths crumble because they pretend any one tactic alone can replace direction. Evidence shows otherwise. Direction first, then amplification. So the choice is straightforward. You can hold on to the myths that drain time year after year, or you can trade them for clarity in how to direct effort. Multitasking, long hours, and endless apps offer short-term comfort but long-term disappointment. Clarity offers the reverse. Discipline in the short term but steady, compounding results in the long run. That recognition sets up the final step. Once the myths are cleared, a single question remains: what replaces them? The answer is the same principle that has run through each part of this framework: clarity across the 7 areas of life we've explored. From career to money, health to growth, relationships to contribution, and the anchor of inner focus, clarity decides how productivity unfolds. And with that perspective, we can now return to the final insight, where modern productivity truly begins. Productivity in 2025 is not defined by hours or apps, it is defined by clarity. The 7 areas we've explored: career, money, health, growth, relationships, contribution, and inner focus, form the framework for lasting results. Each area reinforces the others, and together they reduce the noise that keeps most people spinning without progress. Instead of downloading another tool, pick one area this week and write a measurable goal for it in the comments. Like and subscribe if you'd value a short checklist to keep these priorities visible. Small steps compound, and when shared with others, accountability makes them even stronger.